especially pertaining to minors.
Mine will look very high level, but we come from an international perspective, so this is the way it is. For all those who have been here last year, you've seen the first slide. It's about the organization. It's the UN Specialized Institution in ICTs. Main thing is we're headquartered in Geneva, but we have regional offices and area offices, and our membership are countries, but we have a lot of ICT players, SMEs, and academia also working with us. When we talk about cybersecurity, I'm taking it from a very high level here. Where does the global policy, where do countries agree on things there? It's in the Sustainable Development Goals, where you have in some of the goals clear mandates, clear indication of the need for security. Sustainable Development Goal 9 is the one that talks more about it. It's about resilient infrastructure. From there, we have with this action line about building confidence and use in the and security in the use of ICTs. The two presentations before, I think, on the role of parents highlighted something different here, building confidence and trust in your own parents as opposed to ICTs as well. And how we harmonize these things so that all countries can kind of look at it from the same perspective is to have 5 pillars: the legal aspect of cybersecurity, the technical aspect, organizational aspect, capacity building, and cooperation. I think a lot of the conversation you have today and tomorrow is about the organizational capacity building, technical. I don't know to what extent legal is there. Okay, ITU's role in cyber and child online protection. So convener of multi-stakeholder global collaboration, looking at it from a standards perspective, looking at it from radio comms perspective and capacity building perspective. We don't work on cybercrime and escalation. There are other UN entities that do that. ITU Office for Europe, I mentioned that before. It's 45 countries. So we, from a regional perspective itself, we look at much more countries than the typical Europe. And in so doing, there's a lot more of sharing of practices that happens between countries. Here, this is, if you want, our little Bible for the next 4 years for Europe region. I will ask you to focus on Europe 4, which is the one that's concerned with cybersecurity and child online protection. And the specific objective, as I had mentioned earlier on, is looking at security, resilience, but especially focusing on all citizens, but especially children. Now, here I'm bringing in the challenges we have from an international organization. What are the problems we face actually when we are talking about these topics? Global cooperation is a big problem for us. When you start talking about cybersecurity, very easily it gets escalated to cyber warfare and conflicts, and countries don't agree, of course, there. The one thing they do agree on, child online protection. Everyone has families, everyone who lives in societies, all countries agree that children need to be protected. So this is a common point where global collaboration is possible and has seen a lot of effective actions. We need more collaboration, though, when you talk about cybersecurity on a larger scale, because we need collaboration on incident handling. Incident handling is not just incidents pertaining to children here, but we're talking about cyber attacks towards a country or towards entities in a country. And to be able to do that, having a national CERT, a national focal point, is important, but to be able to handle it on a global perspective, you need to contact where the attacker is from. Typically, it's not from the same country. So how do you do that? How do you make sure that there is a coordination and you have collaboration there? So for major incidents, we've noticed that, yes, there's a lot of collaboration, but it's not a regular collaboration on a daily basis. And this is what we need as well, to be able to really go to the source of the attacks. The challenge number 2, online protection itself, because of course attack surfaces are increasing with the different social interactions online, which is probably the one that is more critical when we're talking today and tomorrow. But there's also the components of 5G coming up, Internet of Things. From an incident response perspective, there's a rescoping of critical infrastructure, basic infrastructure, transport, health, telecommunications, and how these can be attacked, and what do you do when this happens. And with all this data floating everywhere, where are privacy rights? What are we doing about that? So a lot of questions there. People talk about security by design. Yes. Data privacy. Yes. Do we keep it simple and practical, or do we complicate it? Do we go for open data? We're talking about should we just make sure that actually we are not divulging information that we shouldn't divulge, and leave it more open? Think twice. This data, is it really already out there? Because at times we tend to also, from another perspective, overprotect things that are really out there. Then there's the ethics also that comes in. Do we have strong regulation on that? The regulator, telco regulators, the ones who look at the ISPs as well, how much is regulated, how much should be voluntary ethics from big organizations, from the ISPs as well. Bearing in mind that, we have certain big organizations that have users that where the number of users is bigger than country sizes, so they have a lot of information. So really we should look at having open dialogues on that, but really based on human responsibility, the fundamental human responsibility, regardless of what we're doing. Another challenge is the cybersecurity divide. How did we see that there is not just a digital divide, but there is a cybersecurity divide? It's from the Global Cybersecurity Index, which measures the commitments of governments very specifically. So what you're seeing here is the commitments of governments in cybersecurity, which include their commitments on child online protection as well. We'll have actually the new survey coming out by the end of the year with the commitments, but just some information there. In terms of cybersecurity strategy, 50% don't have public ones. Of course, a lot of cyber strategies are confidential, but there's a component that could be made public. 39% don't have a cert, a national cert, so they can't actually have an effective, a necessarily effective way of collaborating regionally or globally when it comes to cyber attacks. Many countries don't have ways of measuring, really measuring cybersecurity readiness at national level. And from an international perspective, when we're talking about all this, we always say in cybersecurity, you're as weak as your weakest link. For an organization, it means the employee who's the less aware is the weakest link, right? When we're talking about child online protection, our kids, could be the weakest link, or we could be the weakest link if we are not aware of what they're doing as well. From the totally global perspective, the country that is less ready or less aware and less committed is the weakest link. So there's a rethinking that we believe that needs to be done at country level for innovating, capacity building. Working together is important. Harmonizing things, reducing confusion, sharing information and practices as we're doing right now for child online protection is important, but for more. We've been having partnerships and we work in collaboration with everyone. What I would like to end with is, last year I talked a bit about a national review that we did of 18 countries in Europe with certain practices in very specific on child online protection. What I would like to mention here is the chapter 4 of a study group report that came out, which is really a survey of 131 countries that have been asked questions very specifically on child online protection. And what you get from there, from that survey, is 62 countries say they do not have an agency or an entity responsible for child online protection. 68 do not have an established public mechanism for reporting incidents. Can you believe that? 81 do not have technical and, mechanisms and capabilities needed to help children online, and 62 have no activity whatsoever. Okay, I will end here with just the list of strategies of things that could be done. Again, reiterating that here in Poland and the Europe region, we are doing much better than the rest of the world. I would like just to probably point out the last point here, the last bullet. I don't know if you see that. It's about child and land protection. Are we taking into account the need of disabled children when we're looking at children being online, disabled children being online, accessibility as well? And I think there will be a bigger conversation on that in the future. So I will end here because there's not more time. This presentation, the whole of it, is available online, so I would ask the organizers just to make it available for everyone. Just to say that when we do cyber drills, we have components of training on child and land protection so that national certs are aware that there are attacks on children as well and how to handle that. So that's it. I'll end here and give the floor. Thank you.